So this table has been the center of so many family dinners, barbecues, parties, and craft projects as well. And I built this back in 2019. And after all these years of sunshine and humidity and just heat and cold and all the hues and everything in between, it is time to give this a refresh. So whether you're looking for an outdoor chair, a bench, some storage, or a dining table just like this, I hope you will find something that will inspire you just like it has thousands of other DIYers. So I'm going to start sanding this and we will start counting down the most popular projects starting at number 9. So first up is the planter bench, which is also my most recent outdoor project. I built this using fence picket boards and some 2x4 boards. The planters are super straightforward to build and you can build them using wood glue and finish nails, but I was going for a different look, so I decided to use pocket holes. And there were a lot of pocket holes. I built the panels with the fence boards and the 2x2s and basically built the entire box. I added some trim to the top and attached some boards for the bottom of the planter. And that is a planter. And of course, I built 2 of these. Before putting it together, I decided to stain all of the boards, the planters, the trellis. I added some landscape fabric and then attached the trellis to the planter. And then I assembled the bench using 2x4s and some braces. And now it's time to put it all together. I had the perfect spot for this in. So while that planter bench was really fun to build, sanding waits for no one, so let's get the sanding party started. I am using 150 grit sandpaper to remove all of the top finish and any stains, etc. on the surface. If you want to learn more about sanding, I do have a detailed video about that, so definitely check that out. Next, I'm going to go over this entire surface with 220 grit sandpaper, but while I do that, let's look at project number 8. And project number 8 is the outdoor storage box, which also I built using redwood. I used 2x8 boards and cut them down, and also used my table saw to cut up some of this leftovers and turn them into 2x2 boards. Then I did exactly what I am doing right now with the table, which is sanding these boards. I sanded them all down to 220 grit and applied stain because later on staining it is going to be a challenge. Building the box is pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of arranging the slats and attaching the 2x2s to act as a brace on the corners. Once the short side panels were done, I attached those to the long sides to create the 3 sides of the box. And I put that on top of the rest of the long sides and completed the structure of the box. Next was building the bottom of the box. And for that, I decided to use pocket hole joinery. So I made pocket holes in all of the slats and then put it all together to build the bottom. I actually built 2 of these, so one was going to be the top and one was going to be the bottom of the box. And this can be easily attached to the box that I built using screws. Now it's just a matter of attaching some casters to the bottom and some hinges to hold the top in place, and that is pretty much it. I designed this box to hold a 20-gallon tote so I can seal it during the winter months, but in the summer it allows for ventilation and all the pool toys to dry up. Of course, the plans for these are also linked in the description below. Okay, now back to the table. So originally I was only planning on sanding down and refinishing the top, which is why I sanded that first. But then I realized I probably do want to refinish the legs as well because they do have some damage. So I am sanding that as well. So now while I sand down this part, let's talk about project number 7, which is the outdoor towel rack. And this one I specifically made because of the pool. I was so tired of having all the wet towels everywhere on the patio furniture. This is built using 2x2 boards. I used redwood over here because by now you've probably already guessed that I love the color and look of redwood and it's super durable outdoors. Once again, I'm using pocket hole joinery, so I made all of the pocket holes and put together the shelves and the frames that would build the entire towel rack. Once all the parts were built, I put everything together And it's really straightforward. And of course, I do have the detailed plans for you to be able to build this for yourself. I finished up the towel rack using my favorite redwood stain, added some hooks, and that is the towel rack. Now, the great thing about this is you can also build this and use it indoors. Okay, now that we've seen that one, let's get back to this table. It's all sanded, so I wiped it all down using a tack cloth and got it ready to stain. And while I get all my staining supplies together, let's talk about this next project, which is a really fun one, and it is the outdoor bar. I started by cutting all of the lumber according to the plans, which are linked in the description below. I'm using all construction lumber, so for a cleaner look, I trimmed off the rounded edges using a table saw, which is a totally optional step. I drilled all of the pocket holes and then gave all the boards a good sanding to smooth out all the rough spots. With all the prep work done, I assembled the leg frames by attaching the slats between the 2x4 legs, and I made sure all of the spacing was even using scrap wood as spacers. Once both the sides were assembled, I connected them with the front and the back slats to complete the frame. Then I built the wide lower shelf and the top counter by joining boards together with wood glue and pocket hole screws. And finally, I attached the leg frame to the underside of the top counter. Plus, I installed the lower shelf between the legs. To finish, I applied a high quality outdoor stain, and there you have it. It's a functional and attractive outdoor bar. And when you're not using it as a bar, it can also double as a potting station. So I am ready to stain, and you can see I am in my stain and paint clothes. Now, if you notice, I only sanded down the top of the table and the legs and the aprons. Those are the only parts that I am going to be refinishing. The underside of the table actually looks perfectly fine because it has been on the underside. It hasn't really been exposed to too many elements. So we're gonna get started and start staining. But here is the next project. Speaking of potting benches and tables, project number 5 is a potting bench, which also doubles as a table, a side table or a serving table, something we have used it for during parties as well. I cut the legs for this at an angle to add a little bit of a fun twist to the table. The rest of the potting bench is made with 1x4 boards, which were pretty jagged. So I sent them through the planer a few times, cut off the edges using my table saw, and gave everything a sanding. Then I assembled the front and back legs using pocket holes and outdoor pocket hole screws. Once the leg frames were done, I moved on to building the top and bottom shelves. These were simple rectangular frames made with the 1x4s, and I also added a few supports to the top frame for stability. After that, I attached the shelves to the legs, centered everything up, and secured it with countersunk screws. To finish everything off, I applied a waterproofing redwood stain, and then I attached the slats to the shelf tops with finish nails. But you can also leave them loose if you want to make cleaning a little bit easier. I added a few hooks to the side for gardening tools, and that was it. And now let's stain the outdoor table. As you have guessed, probably by seeing all of my redwood projects, I love using this waterproofing redwood stain. And actually, this is the can I bought the very first time I built a project back in 2018. So I have still been using this all this while. And actually, the very first project that I built with redwood and bought the stain for is project number 4, which is the hammock stand. I built that hammock stand using 4x4 boards, and I actually made half lap cuts. That was the very first time I had made half lap cuts. Of course, I used my circular saw, and when everything fit together, that was such an amazing feeling. Once I had all the half lap cuts made, I assembled the base by laying out the pieces and securing them with 3-inch exterior wood screws. Then I cut the uprights at a 22.5-degree angle and attached them to the base using 4-inch outdoor wood screws. And then I added braces between the base and the uprights for extra stability. I made sure everything fits snugly by trimming them gradually until they fit just right. And once the structure was completed, I applied my favorite waterproofing redwood stain. Finally, I drilled holes near the top of the uprights to install the eye bolts and added some quick links and hung my hammock. And now I can relax in the shade or the sun whenever I like. That was such a fun project, but let's get back to the table. So now that the legs have dried up, it's time to stain the top. Of course, I wiped down the entire thing with a tack cloth to make sure there was no dust or debris. And then it's time to start staining the top. And while the stain soaks in, let's talk about project number 3, which is one of my absolute favorite projects, and that is the outdoor dining chair. It is made entirely of 2x4 boards, and I have the detailed cut list, dimensions, and schematic step-by-step plans linked in the description below. For the joinery, I used a mix of techniques. I used half-lap joints for back supports. Angled half-lap joints were a bit new to me, but with careful measuring and cutting, they fit together really nicely. I used dowel plugs that I cut out on my drill press to cover up the holes. For the back slats and the armrests, I used dowels, and using dowels is a great way to keep the joints concealed and clean looking. And I used pocket holes to attach the aprons. These are going to be hidden, so the pocket holes will never be visible. Now it's time to attach the seat frame to the legs to complete the entire chair structure. After assembling the main frame, I stained the entire chair to match the outdoor table. And finally, I attached seat slats, and that is a stylish, sturdy chair for the patio. Back at the table, it is time for the top coat, and for outdoor furniture, I always use spar urethane to protect it against all the elements. So that's what I am brushing on right here. I like to use the satin finish because it is not shiny and it gives that nice velvety glow and feel. I'm going to apply 3 coats to the top and the legs, and while I do that, this is perfect timing because the next project number 2, is the outdoor dining table. This is probably the easiest beginner-friendly project in this list. I built this using 2x4s and 2x6s, and once I cut all of the boards to size, I started assembling the tabletop first. I laid out the 2x6 boards with half-inch spacing between them and secured everything using pocket hole screws. Next, to build the base, I attached aprons to the legs to make the 2 side frames and then connected them with the front and the back apron. And once all of that was done, I flipped the tabletop over, centered the base, and attached it to the tabletop using pocket hole screws. And that is the outdoor table. And just like that, this table is ready for a few more years of memories. Now, are you ready for project number 1? This is a project I built back in 2016. It's one of my first projects, and I can't believe it's been the most popular project almost every year since. Take a look. And that is the 2x4 bench with X legs. It uses just 3 2x4 boards. There are angles involved, so it can get a little bit tricky. So definitely watch the original project video and tutorial to see exactly how to cut them and make pocket holes in the angled legs to assemble. Once the pieces are ready, everything is pretty straightforward to assemble using pocket hole screws. Once you build both the end pieces with the X's, everything else is pretty straightforward to assemble. I laid down slats on the floor at an even spacing and attached the frame to the slats using wood screws. Now this is the exterior version, but if you wanted it for the interior version, you could simply replace the top with an upholstered top as well. I have the cut list, dimensions, and step-by-step schematic plans for every single one of the projects that you've seen in this video, and all of them are linked in the description below. Let me know in the comments which of these projects will you be building next, and I will see you next time with another outdoor project video. Bye!